Hello YouTube and fellow preppers, this is Geordie Prepper. Today we're going to be talking about an important issue, and it could potentially lead to a situation which everyone needs to prepare against and needs to be aware that things can escalate from when the public are let down, basically. And what I'm talking about here is the alleged upcoming referendum for Britain to leave the EU. Now, obviously, and I'm assuming that people who are listening to this know that there is no lawful vote that they actually can conduct in, and we do not currently have a voting system which is legitimate, which is accountable, which can be audited, and where everyone who's cast a vote has done so in a way which makes their vote lawful. And if you don't know about the current voting system and what a scam it is and how you do not actually have a vote, then I encourage you all to just educate yourself about the current voting system, and in particular 2 points that you should be researching to help educate about why you don't have a vote is if you look into the history of marking things with an X, and if you look into the history of registration and registering and what it actually means to register things. And if you look into those two things, then you'll find the truth about why you do not have a vote. And the upcoming Brexit vote, as it's been coined, is there's basically two possible outcomes, and it could lead to a situation which we need to be prepared against, especially if you're living in the London area within the M25. Then anyone living in London and other major cities such as Manchester, any sort of large city is obviously more of a target, but I think specifically London is going to have a serious problem, or there is the potential for them to have a very serious problem. And especially if you're living in this area, then I would take some basic preparedness measures to make sure that you have a plan if you begin to see the signs of what I'm going to talk about in a minute. So regarding this unlawful referendum and the illusion that people have been given that they have a choice in the matter, there's two possible outcomes, and this comes from a history of voting and elections. And people have been voting, or they think that they've had a vote, and they in fact probably pride themselves on the fact that they've been at every opportunity casting a vote. Now obviously they haven't had the lawful opportunity to cast a vote, but this belief is maintained for many years, and it always amazes me how they could still believe that they have a legitimate vote when, if you take for example the candidates that are put forward, these are not people that the public have chosen. These are actors, they're paid actors, they go through many years of training. It starts very young in their education, and these people are paid actors that are presented to the public. These are people that don't care what you think. They do not believe in the things that come out of their mouth. They will only say things which to appease the public, because the public like to moan about things. Now obviously if you moan about things, then it can be very easy to sway people to be on your side, because all you have to do is say, you're worried about this, I'm the guy or the man or the woman who's going to fix it for you. Obviously that makes people have faith in them. I'm amazed at how they can have faith in somebody that they do not know. It's just someone who's just saying a lot of things that they want to hear, and yet they do not know this person's background. They do not know where they've came from, who their allegiance is to, and who they're funded by. which is what it comes down to. The basic roots is funding. Who's lining their pockets is essentially who they're going to be faithful to. Now, the public aren't lining their pockets, so they have absolutely no allegiance to the public. But these people who have been voting for years, or there's been the illusion that they have been voting, they have time and again been failed by these people that have convinced them to vote for them. And yet year after year after year, they'll go back to the voting booth and they'll do exactly the same thing. Now, I don't understand how people can tolerate this sort of thing, because they're being continuously lied to year after year after year, and yet they still fall for the same tactics. They still believe that they have a vote, which they don't. Now, what we do have upcoming here, and you'll see this on many a news website, lots of things regarding this Brexit. It's all just pantomime, theatre. You have Mr. Cameron here, who likes animals, I believe, putting his private parts inside animals. Farage, obviously an actor, but he's the antagonist. I think he's Mr. Cameron here. Obviously, is he's very much the by the books, reads from the script very well. He's a good little boy. He does what he's told. And then obviously you have the fox in the hen house here, Farage. You have many other players who are in the theatre, who are in the scenes at different times here. And this is all put onto various media channels. This is just one media outlet that I've chosen. And basically there's two possible outcomes which will happen after the votes are counted, or the alleged votes, because there is no vote. Outcome number one is that there will be so many votes for Britain to leave the EU, and if it is by such a significant amount that it makes them hard to commit fraud and to adjust the numbers too much, because people would notice it. The outcome of this, if there's too many votes to manipulate, what will happen is that they'll simply ignore what the people have put down in the vote that they think that they've been given. So the vote that people think that they've been given, if enough of them vote for the exit, then they'll simply ignore it. And the reason I chose this article here that I've got up is that it essentially tells you that they're going to do this. The headline is Parliament preparing to ignore public vote for Brexit? Well, I would say unequivocally that yes, they are, because they ignore the public on every other matter. The public are not their masters. They have absolutely no. We the people have absolutely no say at the present time and in the current system to influence the outcome of anything that this alleged government presents to us, because they simply do not serve us. That's the bottom line. And if you think that they do, then I would just, the only thing I can do is to suggest that you turn off the television for one thing, and just look into the history of things, and especially early newspaper articles, because the censoring in early 1900s, late 1800s on newspaper articles wasn't exactly as it is now. There wasn't the total control and the total manipulation that they have now. So early newspaper articles are very, 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 very good sources to look for when you're looking into the history of things. So basically, this article here is saying that MPs who support remaining in the European Union may use their majority in Parliament to sidestep the public altogether and vote to keep Britain in the EU's single market, meaning free movement of people, goods and services would stay despite a Brexit. I mean, essentially, they're just telling you that they're going to completely ignore the wishes of the public, and they do this at every opportunity that they can. We've seen this time and time again. They're not there to serve you, basically. And the second outcome, which could happen, is that the first one being that if there's such an overwhelming majority that wants the Brexit, what will happen is that they'll simply ignore it. The second outcome of the vote will be that it will be so close that what they'll do then is that they'll simply manipulate the votes to show that they want to remain in the European Union. So this again will be not what the public wants, I believe, because I think the majority of the public do want Britain out of the European Union. The problem is that in the current system, there's no way for us to actually action that wish. We simply have no influence on this decision, and it's not even a decision really, because it's already been decided, and I can tell you now that the vote is going to say that we are remaining in the European Union. That's absolute 100% what the outcome is going to be. I mean, if you look at the rigging that went on with the Scottish independence vote, I mean, they didn't take any measures to hide it. They were absolutely blatant in the fraud in the election rigging, which happened. And they're allowed to do this because, for one thing, it's their system. They control it. And the second reason is that they don't have to legitimize anything to anyone, because unfortunately, and at the present time, they're in control. So they can ignore the public, depending on whatever the vote is. It doesn't really matter. If they want us to remain in the European Union, then that is what's going to happen. So they can ignore the vote, and they can ignore public opinion, and they can also manipulate the votes. So the primary reason that they're able to manipulate the vote is because the public registered their vote, and that's the other aspect that I wish people would look into. If you register anything, then you give up ownership of that. So before you even go to the polling booth and you think that you put down your vote, which you don't, the fact that you've registered your vote means that it's not actually yours. So it doesn't matter what you put down on that piece of paper. It's irrelevant. It means nothing. The only thing that's relevant when you go to the voting booth in the current system is that you believe that you've affected the outcome when you haven't. There's no lawful vote that you can conduct in. So the vote is either going to be very close, or they're going to present that the vote's very close, and then it's going to creep over to remaining in the European Union, because that's what's going to happen either way. Or they're going to completely ignore the overwhelming response of the public, and they're basically just going to completely ignore it. And this option here is the most dangerous, because I believe it could lead to this. And basically, if the overwhelming view of the public is that they want out of the European Union, and the people that are in charge at the present time completely ignore it, and the opinion that we should leave is on such a scale that if enough people are saying that they voted out, then there's going to be no way that they can convince the public that the vote was legitimate and that everyone voted to remain in the European Union. Because if the outcome is that the European Union, that was the vote that everyone said, oh yeah, we want to remain in the European Union. If that's what they present on the mainstream media, which they will, and yet every single individual who's interviewed on the street, and I'm sure that also there'll be cameras in the polling station, because if we look at the Scottish vote, there was as well, when that's how the mass vote rigging and fraud was exposed. There's cameras everywhere. People are going to take cameras into the polling stations. If there's a massive pile of votes to exit the EU, and yet they present it on the mainstream media that people have said yes, that they want to remain, then it's going to be very hard to convince the public of this. And, I believe it could lead to this, and this is what I'm basically saying to people to prepare against. And you literally have 3 weeks to do so. If you're in London, then I would think that you'd be starting to make preparations now, and to store water and food, and take a walk about around the perimeter of where you are. Make sure that you're aware of all the escape exits, because if the public are ignored, then basically, and if they're trying to suppress people's expression of their anger, then they make revolution inevitable. And I think in 2011, the riots, we saw a very early indication of this, because we're so close to anarchy. Most people just don't even realize it. They're so distracted by talentless nobodies, materialistic narcissists that have absolutely no worth to the planet at all, that they don't see just below the surface of just how divided, how corrupt things actually are. And these are all things that the corruption and the division has all been put into place beforehand. But obviously, if the public is ignored at the upcoming vote, then things could go this way. And the main purpose of this video is just to give the possibility that this is something that you're going to need to be prepared for, because the scale of it would be far worse than the 2011 riots. It would spread to many other cities. Up here in the northeast, I think us Geordies are extremely resilient. We're very calm. During the 2011 problems, I didn't hear of anything happening up here in the northeast. I think we have a very relaxed, yet we would take a very robust approach and a very robust response to anything that would upset things up here in the northeast. I think we have a very fine sense of community up here, and I think this showed, because, like I said, I didn't hear of any problems up here. I'm not aware of anything. I mean, if anything did happen, it certainly wasn't on the scale that it was in London or Manchester and Birmingham, I think. But this could potentially be coming soon, and there's only so long that you can oppress a people before we snap back. And at various stages throughout history, we've seen the early signs of it. And there are tensions out there, and there isn't always the release mechanism to solve this problem before it happens. So, and I think the Brexit could lead to what I'm going to call the Brexit riots, because I think that it's something that is highly likely to happen. So it's something that I'm reporting on, and I'm saying to everyone now, preppers or otherwise, just take action to look after yourself and your neighbours. Have an exit plan. Have a plan in general, in case something happens. Make contact with people who are outside in quiet areas, friends, family. Make sure that you know the route to those areas if you do know someone in a quiet area. And just stock up on food and water. At least have 2 or 3 days worth, at the very, very bare minimum, 72 hours worth. And make sure that you have information gathering sources such as a radio, and that you basically just take all actions to look after yourself and those that are in your group, family and friends, because things do happen. And this Brexit could be a very potential flashpoint, and just people need to just be aware. And I'll just say lastly, just be safe and be prepared, guys.